Mindfulness meditation is a specific practice on learning to become more present in our day-to-day and moment-to-moment life. In many ways we could say that mindfulness meditation is a way of life, but it could be reflected in two specific practices, a formal one and an informal practice. The formal practice is using specific mindfulness meditation objects to help us develop more awareness of what's actually going on in the mind and body. We may become aware of the breath as an object of awareness, or bodily sensations, listening to sounds, and mindfulness is the practice of learning to become more awake, more present to our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life. Mindfulness is a bit different than other meditative traditions in that we don't use mantras or visualizations, but we focus our attention into the present moment. Sometimes we may focus with the breath, other times bodily sensations, perhaps at times thoughts, emotions, observing, if you will, the changing nature of our mind states and our body states. So we don't use mantras to any degree or visualizations. It's about really feeling into this own body-mind. Mindfulness-based stress reduction was developed at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center by Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn and assisted by Dr. Saki Santarelli. And this program was developed in 1979 by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Jon Kabat-Zinn actually had a promising career in molecular biology, working at a medical school at UMass Medical Center. He also was a mindfulness meditation practitioner, and I believe that he, in his early career, was reflecting on how he could potentially bring both of these worlds together, medicine and meditation. Each he had a real passion for. And during a meditation retreat, he evidently had a moment's pause where this vision of developing mindfulness as a stress reduction program arose into his mind, and he became evidently very excited about possibly implementing a program using mindfulness as a way of working with stress, pain, and illness. This had actually never been done before. He went back to UMass Medical Center and contacted his colleagues and proposed a pilot project of starting mindfulness-based stress reduction programs at UMass Medical Center in Worcester. And at the time, his colleagues were very thrilled and gave him support, and Dr. Kabat-Zinn actually requested physicians to please send to him their most difficult patients, chronic pain patients, anxiety patients, and begin a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. John, also coming from a scientific family and a science background, also has the unique capabilities of also studying and analyzing the data that he compiled while working in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and began to study various populations, including people that lived with chronic pain that went through his program, people that had anxiety and panic disorders, and many other conditions, and began to accumulate data and begin to publish articles that were published in major medical journals. So through the years, there's been a growing research in mindfulness-based stress reduction, and particularly in how it works with people living with stress, pain, and illness. And there's actually now over 200 medical centers in the United States that actually have mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, as well as it's grown internationally. Generally, in each class in mindfulness-based stress reduction, we begin with a guided meditation, and then we often introduce a form of mindful movement. And we generally introduce, over the 8-week period, 3 forms of mindful movement. We introduce mindful yoga, or mindful walking, or mindful qigong. So after we do a period of movement, then we also break into small groups during the class and begin to discuss with one another about what we're learning about ourselves as we've been practicing with the mindfulness CDs that are handed out at the beginning of the class, that we'd like each participant to work with at home, developing mindfulness into their day-to-day life. And then we take a break, of course, and then we'll come back to a larger group and begin to discuss with one another about what we're learning and discovering about ourselves as we bring more of the lens of awareness, of mindfulness, to ourselves in our day-to-day life. They generally will last 8 weeks, and we meet together once a week for 2.5 hours. And then often in the 6th week, we also will have an all-day session that is part of the 8-week program that's generally held on a Saturday or Sunday from 9:30 to 4:30, where actually we make it a day of silence where we go very deep into the practices of mindfulness. Of course, the instructor will be giving some guided meditation, so there will be some talking with the instructor, but the participants will all be keeping silent so that we can go much more deeply into the practice. And the day is composed of alternating between periods of stillness, doing sitting meditation, and movement, whether it be walking, yoga, or qigong. There's a number of different stories, and one that's coming to mind right now, and this is something that's very practical. There was a woman that was dealing with a lot of chronic pain issues in her lower back, and she also worked as a receptionist in an office. And one day, while she was working, she happened to turn to go to this cabinet that she goes to like a number of times a day, so consequently a number of times a week, and hundreds and thousands of times over the months and years. But as she was turning, all of a sudden she became aware that the way that she was turning was actually exacerbating her pain in her back that she never actually noticed before. Because in mindfulness training, we're really beginning to take a look not only in working with the formal practices of mindfulness with the CDs, but bringing our mindful awareness into our day-to-day life. When we're eating, know that we're eating. When we're moving, know that we're moving. So forth. All these different activities of daily life we bring more attention to. And so she brought more attention to the way that she was moving and noticed that her pain was exacerbating because of that move. And so she, upon realizing that, it was like a big light bulb when I'm like, gosh, if I just have this cabinet change a certain position or change how I actually go and reach it, I'm going to be having a lot less pain. And thus began, due to this attentiveness, she was able to begin to decrease and not further exacerbate her chronic pain condition. There's been a number of people working with panic and anxiety that have had significant breakthroughs. One gentleman in particular was very burdened by a lot of anxious thoughts, and one of the components of the sitting meditation practice is to be able to begin to sit back and observe thoughts and begin to see that thoughts come and that they go, that they're ever transient. And this gentleman, I remember his discovery of observing that his thoughts were transitory, that even the anxious thoughts that he was feeling was just something that comes into awareness and leaves. And this recognition helped him to be able to begin to disengage from anxious thoughts, to be able just to observe them as just thought patterns that just come and go. And he began to actually experience more and more freedom and less anxiety when he realized that his thoughts, that his anxious thoughts were just thoughts, and that they come and that they go. I've had a number of people say that because they've developed more body awareness, they're becoming more aware of how they're holding themselves in their body, getting tighter, or being aware of just the mind states that are connected with the body, that when there's uncomfortable mind states, angry states, sad states, there's a lot of, feeling a lot of stress, that the body seems to get tighter. And then many people have begun to discover that there's a relationship between those internal reactions to an elevation of blood pressure. And upon realizing that they are holding tightly, they can become proactive in beginning to soften their bodies and their minds, and thus lowering their blood pressure. And many people discover that they can begin to manage their blood pressure more because they're more aware, if you will. They have their fingers on the pulse of how they're feeling in their own mind and bodies in their day-to-day life. They can notice when they're beginning to get tight and release that much sooner, thus trying to keep the blood pressure at an equalized level.